The 10 most legitimately tough actors in Hollywood history. Hollywood has had no shortage of tough guys, but for a select few, grit and danger weren't an act. They were lived experiences. These men carried scars, real battles, and hardship into their roles, making their screen presence truly authentic. 10. Charlton Heston. Before parting the Red Sea, Heston served as an aerial gunner in World War II, flying dangerous missions. That real courage shaped his career. Known for doing his own stunts, he mastered chariot racing for Ben-Hur, suffering injuries but pushing through. Whether sweating in armor or holding a pose for hours as Michelangelo, Heston's toughness came from a place of real endurance. 9. Anthony Quinn. Anthony Quinn's commanding presence came from a life shaped by real struggle. Born during the Mexican Revolution, he grew up in poverty after his family moved to Los Angeles. By the time most kids were in school, Quinn was already working tough jobs, construction, butchering, anything to help support his family. He even boxed professionally as a teenager, leaving him with the broken nose that became his rugged trademark. Directors always noticed his strength wasn't stage-trained. It was the kind of muscle you earn from years of hard labor. Even in films like Zorba the Greek, he refused to fake it. When he hauled logs or danced with wild energy, it was all real. Quinn wasn't just playing tough, he was living it. 8. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum's cool, unshakable style came from a life that was anything but easy. Orphaned young, he drifted through Depression-era America, hopping trains and taking whatever work he could find, coal miner, ditch digger, even professional boxer. That hard living toughened him, but it was a stint on a Georgia chain gang for vagrancy that truly marked him. Few Hollywood stars could claim that kind of experience. It gave Mitchum a natural toughness directors admired. He didn't need to act hard. He simply was. His punches on screen looked real because he'd thrown plenty in life. And even when scandal threatened to end his career, Mitchum just shrugged it off, showing the same resilience that had carried him through his rough beginnings. 7. John Wayne. Long before the Duke became a legend, Marion Morrison was an athlete with real physical strength. He played football at USC before injuries sent him toward Hollywood, where his first jobs weren't glamorous. They were back-breaking labor, moving props, and working as a stuntman. That work ethic never left him. Wayne kept performing dangerous stunts for decades, even after serious injuries. During the Alamo, a horsefall cracked his ribs, but instead of stopping production, he taped himself up and kept riding. His toughest fight came later, after losing a lung and several ribs to cancer. Most actors would have retired, but Wayne went right back to set, still doing his own stunts. His toughness wasn't just a role. It was the story of his life. 6. James Cagney. James Cagney may not have been the biggest guy in the room, but he was one of the toughest. Growing up on the rough streets of New York's Lower East Side, he learned to fight early, boxing to survive, not for sport. That real-world grit gave his on-screen brawls a brutal authenticity no one else could touch. Directors often said he threw the most convincing punches in Hollywood because they came from real experience, not choreography. What made him unique was the mix of raw toughness and agility, sharpened by his early career as a dancer. The result was a fighter's edge with a performer's timing. Cagney didn't act tough, he lived it. 5. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas's rise from poverty to stardom is one of Hollywood's most inspiring stories. The son of Jewish immigrants, he grew up with very little, but developed a fierce determination that carried him forward. Before acting, he was a skilled collegiate wrestler, earning a scholarship that proved just how powerful and disciplined he was. He later served in the Navy during World War II, working as a communications officer in dangerous waters across the Pacific. Even after being medically discharged, he kept that toughness with him. On screen, he became famous for pushing himself beyond limits, insisting on performing his own dangerous stunts and training like an athlete for roles such as Spartacus. His intensity was unmatched. But what really proved his toughness came later in life. He survived a near-fatal helicopter crash in his 70s, endured years of painful recovery, and even fought his way back after a severe stroke robbed him of speech. 4. Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen was known as the King of Cool, but behind that effortless style was a man who lived on the edge. His childhood was turbulent, and it was the Marines that finally gave him discipline. There, he even saved 5 fellow Marines during an Arctic exercise, a story that defined his real courage. Away from the military, McQueen chased adrenaline like few others. He wasn't pretending to love cars and motorcycles. He was a genuine competitor, racing at professional levels. In fact, during the filming of The Great Escape, he pushed to do his own motorcycle stunts, including sequences that were genuinely life-threatening. Directors often worried because he had no fear. He lived to test his limits. His passion for racing and daredevil spirit meant that danger wasn't part of his job. It was his lifestyle. Hollywood gave him fame, but his toughness came long before that, from the streets, the Marines, and the racetrack. 3. Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin's reputation as one of Hollywood's toughest men wasn't an act. It was built from real war. As a Marine in the Pacific during World War II, he fought on the front lines and was nearly killed during the Battle of Saipan, where he was badly wounded by machine gun fire. He earned a Purple Heart and carried the scars, including a limp, he hid for the rest of his career. That real experience shaped his entire acting style. When Marvin played violent men, it wasn't about choreography. He understood combat on a personal level. Fellow actors often said he carried an intimidating aura, as though he really knew how dangerous life could be. And it wasn't just stories. Off-camera, his toughness still showed. He once held his own in a bar fight against multiple lumberjacks and walked away bruised but unshaken, reporting to set the next day like nothing had happened. Lee Marvin didn't just play tough. He lived it. 2. Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson's toughness was carved out of one of the hardest childhoods imaginable. Born into crushing poverty as one of 15 children, he was working in Pennsylvania coal mines by the age of 10. The labor was brutal, but it shaped his body and hardened his spirit. Later, during World War II, he served as a B-29 aerial gunner, flying 25 combat missions over Japan and earning a Purple Heart for his service. These experiences left him with a resilience and strength that no Hollywood stunt training could ever match. When he became a star, his rough exterior wasn't an invention. It was written into his face and his presence. On set, co-stars often commented on the sheer power he carried in his hands from years of mining and war. When Bronson threw a punch, it looked real because it was grounded in a lifetime of survival and hard work. He didn't need to act like a tough man. He already was one. 1. Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy was perhaps the unlikeliest Hollywood star, but also the toughest man ever to appear on screen. Small and baby-faced, at just 5 feet 5 inches, he didn't look like a war hero, but his real-life record said otherwise. He became the most decorated American soldier of World War II, receiving 28 medals for valor, including the Medal of Honor. At only 19 years old, he held off an entire company of German soldiers for an hour while wounded, out of ammunition, and exposed to enemy fire. Military historians estimate he personally killed over 240 combatants, an unimaginable feat for someone so young. When Hollywood brought him in, they struggled to cast him because his youthful looks didn't match his heroic record. The irony was, when they filmed To Hell and Back, based on his own life, they left out some of his actual deeds, fearing audiences wouldn't believe them. His heroism came with a cost. He carried the psychological scars of war for the rest of his life. But when Audie Murphy played a soldier or a fighter, he wasn't pretending. He had lived it. He wasn't acting tough. He was the real thing. And there you have it. The toughest Hollywood legends of all time. These weren't just actors playing strong men. They lived through real battles, hardships, and dangers that shaped who they were on and off screen. Their stories prove that toughness isn't only about what you see in the movies. It's about the life they survived behind the cameras. If you enjoyed revisiting these incredible stars, make sure to stick around because we have even more Hollywood stories coming your way in the next video.